Hey there, bookworms and history buffs! Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most pivotal events in human history, the French Revolution. From 1789 to 1799, France underwent a seismic shift, shaking off the shackles of monarchy and giving birth to a new era of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Or at least, that was the goal. So, buckle up as we explore the causes of this momentous event, from the extravagant lifestyles of the French aristocracy to the crippling poverty of the peasantry. Before we can dive into the blood and the barricades, we need to understand what brought France to a boiling point. As with most revolutions, it wasn't just one thing, but a perfect storm of social, economic, and political factors that had been brewing for decades. Let's start with the French social structure, which, to put it mildly, was a bit lopsided. Imagine a pyramid. At the very top, living large, you had the first estate made up of the clergy. Below them, in the second tier of this societal pyramid, were the nobles, the second estate. Now, at the very bottom of this pyramid, we find the third estate. This massive group comprised about 98% of the French population. They were the backbone of France, paying all the taxes, yet they had virtually no say in how the country was run. Decades of extravagant spending by the monarchy, coupled with costly wars like the American Revolution, which ironically France had helped fund, had drained the treasury. Meanwhile, a series of bad harvests led to soaring food prices, pushing the already struggling peasants to the brink of starvation. And if economic hardship and social inequality weren't enough, France was also suffering from a severe case of bad leadership. King Louis XVI, well-intentioned but utterly clueless, was completely out of touch with the plight of his people. Okay, so we've set the stage. France is a powder keg of discontent, and all it needs is a spark to ignite the revolution. That spark came in 1789 with the calling of the Estates General. Louis XVI, desperate for a solution to the financial crisis, was basically hoping they'd rubber stamp some new taxes for, you guessed it, the Third Estate. But the Third Estate, emboldened by Enlightenment ideas of popular sovereignty and individual rights, had other plans. They saw this as an opportunity to demand real change, to have their voices heard after centuries of being ignored. Inspired by Enlightenment thinkers like Rousseau and Montesquieu, they argued that they, the representatives of the vast majority of the French people, should have more power than the clergy and nobility combined. They demanded fairer taxes, an end to aristocratic privileges, and a constitutional monarchy that limited the king's power. The Third Estate, joined by some sympathetic members of the clergy, declared themselves the National Assembly, the true representatives of the French people. The news of the National Assembly's formation spread like wildfire through Paris. Ordinary people, inspired by this act of courage, rose up in support. And on July 14, 1789, they stormed the Bastille, a royal prison that had come to symbolize the tyranny of the monarchy. The storming of the Bastille wasn't just about freeing prisoners. It was a symbolic act of defiance, a declaration that the old order was over. The revolution had a profound impact on France, transforming its social structure, government, and relationship with the church. The Estates General sounds a bit like a boring history lecture, right? But trust me, this assembly, which hadn't met for over 170 years, became the unlikely battleground where the French Revolution took its first shaky steps. Picture this, it's 1789 and France is teetering on the brink of financial collapse. Louis XVI, desperate for a solution, decides to summon the Estates General, hoping they'll approve some new taxes. Now the Estates General was divided into three groups representing the three estates of French society. You had the First Estate, the clergy, all decked out in their religious finery. Then came the Second Estate, the nobility, dripping with jewels and privilege. And finally, you had the Third Estate, representing everyone else, from peasants to wealthy merchants. And they were not impressed. The Estates General operated on a rather unfair voting system. Each estate got one vote, regardless of its size. So, the clergy and nobility, representing a tiny fraction of the population, could always outvote the Third Estate, even though the Third Estate represented the vast majority of the French people. The Third Estate saw this meeting as their chance to finally air their grievances. They came armed with cahiers de doléances, lists of grievances, detailing their complaints about unfair taxes, government corruption, and the lack of political representation. The Third Estate argued that since they represented the vast majority of the population, they should have more representatives, and their votes should count more. However, the First and Second Estates, clinging to their centuries-old privileges, were reluctant to give an inch. The stage was set for a showdown. Tension filled the air as the three estates gathered at the Palace of Versailles. The Third Estate, led by fiery orators and inspired by Enlightenment ideals, refused to back down from their demands for equality and reform. The Third Estate, frustrated by the stalemate and inspired by Enlightenment ideals, decided to take matters into their own hands. On June 17, 1789, they made a bold move.